Hey everyone, I'm Jeff Whelan, the host of the WB Download, and I want to invite you and welcome you to our podcast. My brother and I own and operate Whelan Builders. It's a custom home building company here in Southwest Ohio. The WB Download mostly focuses on interviewing folks associated with custom building. We stray now and then to interview people who I think are interesting and to break up the monotony of the same old podcast. I also like to highlight things that are going on in my everyday life along with our businesses. I started this podcast to help people understand the custom builder world, but to also give people a chance to hear what others have to say and highlight their expertise and experiences in life. We drop on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month with a new topic and or guest each time. I hope you join us here on the WB Download and enjoy listening and hearing stories of people in and out of the custom builder world. Welcome to the WB Download. Welcome to the WB Download. Hey everybody, I'm Jeff Whelan. Thanks again for tuning in here on the WB Download. Today is Tuesday, May the 12th, about halfway through the year, believe it or not. Man, we got a lot of stuff going on, but I just want to make sure that we reach out once again here and talk about these birthdays. 2 weeks ago, we had a big celebration for Jared, who works here with us. And we went out for some cocktails and some appetizers for him, celebrating him. And we also were celebrating the fact that he finished his first house with us. So he did such a wonderful job, great dude. And he fits into this team super good, man. And then my niece, Mila McKinney, it was her birthday. And then we went down through the Whelans, Micah, Mike, and Mackenzie. They were all together there in 1 week. So happy birthday to them folks. And here's a cat that we haven't mentioned his name on this podcast here in a little while. And I'm not sure why. Probably because he shunned me after I jumped out of the group, out of my Builder 20 group. But Dan Geis from Golden, Colorado, the distinguished gentleman from Golden, Colorado. Happy birthday to you, Dan. Man, you're a heck of a guy. One of the best in the business out there in Golden, Colorado. Hopefully, once he hears his name here on the WB Download, he'll call me. I doubt he will. Also, last week I had a chance to jump back up to Johnstown, Ohio. As I told you last year, had a chance to reconnect with my boss that I had there when I was in college, when I worked on the farm out in Johnstown. And so I was able to touch base with his family and just kind of reconnect with them guys over the last year. Well, his dad passed away unexpectedly, and ran up there for the funeral and got to be able to talk to a whole bunch of people I haven't talked to in a long time. But I hope them guys can find a way to ease their pain and celebrate their dad and just kind of pick up the pieces, man. It's tough. Disappointed because when I reconnected with him, I got a chance to talk to his mom and dad. And our goal was to get them down here to see our place and just kind of, even if we went back up there for dinner and all these things going through your head after somebody passes away, the things you didn't get to do. But man, God, yeah, may you rest in peace. So, hey, now, the big thing that happened here just this past weekend was Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And I'll tell you right now, I've been blessed with some of the greatest women in my life. My mom and my grandma and my wonderful wife, just guiding me and leading me. And I'm grateful for each one of them and can't say enough about them. I'll tell you that one of my goals in life is to make my wife proud every day. And I'm not sure if I'm doing a good job, but I'm trying. So happy Mother's Day. You'll recall last year we had my mom on here, and Mike and I had a chance to interview her and find out about her life, and it was really cool to do that. So my goal this year was to have Shannon on here, my wife, and she is a strong no. I even pitched it to her like maybe the kids could interview her for Mother's Day this year, and she still said no. So I can't push it any further. But happy Mother's Day to everybody out there. And we got a couple jobs, that we're finishing up here. We have one out in Loveland. This is the job that we took over from another builder who disappeared, took the money and ran. And this is the one I was talking about that Jared finished up. And it's just a really cool finishes. We had a designer on this job named Shannon Wolpert. She really kicked butt on this thing and just did an awesome job. And can't say enough about her, but these customers, man, God love them. And so fortunate that we got the chance to hook up with them and finish this house. I'm so grateful that they trusted us to be able to do that and work with them. So we're glad to get that one wrapped up and get them guys moved in. And so we're looking forward to celebrating with them. We have another job over in Indian Hill that we're wrapping up. And this one is also one that my brother took over here from another couple supervisors that we had scroll through through Wheeling Builders. But this was a really, really tough site. Really tough site, and it's on a hillside. It's got a Hamilton County septic system on it, and just made everything challenging there. Very, very challenging, but the end product looks good. And thank God for Mike, because he was able to take this job over and really please the homeowner, and turned out for a really good experience with them. And then we've got another one up in Liberty Township that's going on. We've got jobs going on all over the place, but this is a rather large one. And I keep talking about this one because, just on the foundation alone, we had about 6 different pours. We had some small walls, we had some tall walls, we had some stem walls, we had a number of different things going on up there, and it took a long time to get through it. And Jared's running that one, doing a great job. So just stay tuned, because we've got some different photos and things that we're going to share as we progress with that one. And then also we've got another one that we're getting ready to start over in. I don't know, man. It's called Middletown area, but I think it's more like Lebanon. But it's a big project, and Frank's going to run that one for us. And we've been just having a bunch of pre-con meetings with all the trades and the customer, and trying to get things going. It's a teardown, so we got to get my good friend Mike O'Rourke with O'Rourke Wrecking in there to tear that house down and another building that we have on there. So good stuff, all good stuff. And the Homerama job, we finally got our brick in, selected it, got some special mortar that we're using on that job, and they started laying it a week again on a Saturday about a week and a half ago. And so it's coming along. We're finishing drywall in there, and we're getting ready to put all the finished floors and build the decks out there. So we're moving along. Need to pick up pace because running a little bit behind with everything, and but we're going to get it done. Really got about 60 days left on this thing, so we're going to have to hustle and put it in another gear. But on the farm, we've got one baby that we had here, so that makes a total of 9 so far, and we got one more to go. We knew these, I keep saying this, we knew these last 2 were going to be a little bit longer because of some things they had going on last summer, at the end of last summer. But thankfully we had another bull calf, and it's doing good. And other than that, we're just doing some pasture prep and getting these 4-H cattle ready for the fair coming in July. So lots of good things, lots of good stuff. My kids are working their butts off. We're in the middle of baseball season, and Raina's just getting fired up with cheer and all the things that come along with that. So busy life, man. Wouldn't have it any other way. So I want to just take a second to welcome Brad Elkowitz to the show. Brad is with Focus Energy, and we do some energy ratings. We have to test the house on paper, and then we have to test it physically at the end of the job to see its energy performance. And Brad's going to talk about all those things today with us. This is the nitty-gritty details. And the things that people use, a lot of builders use for marketing, don't understand all the details that we're going to talk about today. Homeowners certainly, some of them do, but a lot of them don't. And I just encourage you to dig deeper when you're talking. If you're going to build a house, talk to your builder about these things, and not like you're trying to catch them off guard, but talk through the details with them about how they plan to use this process and understand energy efficiencies and the things that go into the houses. I talk about this a little bit with Brad, kind of spilling some beans here on some different things that we do. And I said, hey, you know what? If it helps somebody get a better house and helps a builder be a better builder, then let's talk about it. That's what this podcast is for. One of the reasons what this podcast is for. We got done with this interview, and I told Brad and I told Lee, and I said, this is one of the coolest ones because it's such details and things that people don't just talk about all the time. The other crazy thing is that, I never get to see Brad. I mean, we're talking emails, texting. He's doing a bunch of calculations, doing all kinds of things for us, but we're not like out there working together. So that was different, but we've been working together a really long time. Another key factor and another key team member to Wheeling Builders sitting right here in Brad Elkowitz with Focus Energy. I'm excited for y'all to learn more about this. Here he is right now on the WB Download. All right, man. Like I said, today our guest is none other than Brad Elkowitz from Focus Energy. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Man, I'll tell you what, I was trying to think this morning about how long we've been working together. And I think it's probably been like close to 15 years, isn't it?
A little more. I think the first time I met you guys was at the Extreme Makeover House.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes.
Man, that was 2008.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it has been longer than that. What were you doing up there? What were we doing?
I was the operations manager for the insulation company.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't remember much from that whole thing because I mean, you know, sometimes people come up to me and say, I met you at the Extreme Makeover. And I'm like, what time was it? Because if it was in the middle of the night, you know, because we built that house and
I think we did that installation. I want to say we started around 2 or 3 in the morning and we were back to the shop by 6.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing was pretty cool. For anybody who doesn't know, you know, a friend of mine, Scott Dallas, was the one of the main builders for the Extreme Makeover Home Edition back in 2008, and it was here in Westchester. And he and I joined partners on it together and built that thing. And man, what a cool experience! You know, for me, it was a cool experience just because I didn't expect to be talking about this today. It's going to be pretty cool. So because we had it scheduled every 15 minutes. And everybody's like, oh my God, you guys throw that stuff together. And I was like, no, it wasn't like that at all. I mean, we had so many people. We had drywallers that had one room and that was all they did.
They were hanging drywall as soon as we finished the installation. And we did that house. We did that like on a Saturday and we were back on Monday blowing the attic. Yeah. And you guys were moving furniture in.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, and we had the building inspectors. They stayed the night there for the most part. They were hanging out and just watching everything that was going on. Like the roofers, we had Ray St. Clair doing a roofing, and they must have had probably, I don't know how many different crews, but I'll bet there was probably 30 or 40 people on that roof at any given time. And so that was really cool. I think the glitz and the glamour of it from what they do with all the guys that are on the show and all that stuff. Them people don't do shit. Yeah. We did it all. And then they're out there like breaking their arm, patting themselves on the back. And
yeah, you got guys showing up with tool belts on that they don't even know where the hammer goes.
But it was an experience. And we helped a family. I mean, I think that was pretty neat to be able to work with those people. But man, that's cool. I can't believe I didn't realize that. So you're one of the hidden people that we work with. And I met another guy at Extreme Makeover that I had worked with for years, Jerry Kohler, and he said, he comes up to me in the middle of the night and he's like, hey, we've been working together for like 10 years, never met him, you know, but you and I, we've known each other for a long time. But you come in at the end of the job currently right now, where you are doing the blower door test and I tell people all the time, we test it on paper and then we test it in real life, and you're doing a real life test. Give us a requirement that we have for building code for our building departments. But, you know, kind of when we just talk about what your group, your Focus Energy business, what do you guys do? What do you focus on besides energy? Get it? See what
there you go.
Talk to me.
Well, we're kind of involved through the whole process because starting at the beginning, we'll model the house in our computer software. I use REM Rate. There's a couple out there. Some of the other people use Ekotrope. It's basically like driving a Chevy or driving a Ford. They're still going to do the same thing. Yeah. But we model the house and give what is called a projected rating. So, and the projected rating is compared against what the code minimum is. So as long as you're better than that, you're projected to pass code. The building code or the Energy Star code? Or it's the energy code that is part of your building permit process. Yeah. Okay. So, and then, you know, throughout the process, we monitor, we look to see what you're putting in the house as far as, you know, the big things are your HVAC equipment. You know, what's the efficiency of the furnace? What's the SEER of the air conditioner? Same thing with the water heater. And then your insulation levels. Yeah. All that goes into the modeling. So when you, and I'm just, I do want to interrupt you because I want to have a conversation. I was thinking about this the other day because we have a continuing education that we do with our people and every other Wednesday here in the office. And we were talking about the zones that you go through specifically for Ohio. And what made me start talking about it was the frost line. But in Southwest Ohio, our jurisdiction crosses over 2 different zones. Is that right? Correct. And when these are horizontal lines that are drawn across the United States based on the National Weather System of degree days and freeze temperatures, wind speeds, all these different things that come into play with it. And what are we zone 4? We are actually right now basically sitting on the border between them. So in the building areas that you guys build, it's Claremont and Hamilton County are zone 4. Yeah. Butler and Warren are are zone 5.
Yeah.
So sitting where we're sitting right here, you could almost hit a golf ball into zone 4. And for me, it's very frustrating because modeling it changes dramatically between zone 4 and zone 5.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, it doesn't make any sense. In my mind, it should be more metropolitan areas.
Yeah.
And move it up to like Middletown, because that's really where the weather line breaks for us.
Yeah.
You live in Lebanon, I live in Milford, and there's times that you get snow and I get nothing.
Yeah.
And, I can drive to your house in 25 minutes.
West side, east side. I mean,
Exactly,
they're getting 6 inches of rain over there. And then by the time it fizzes out, by the time you get to the east side, I mean, there's all those different things. So when you say modeling, you're talking about so we have a model energy code that we use, and they go by the zones, but there's 2 or 3 different ones that we can choose from. We're using the Ohio Home Builders Association prescriptive method that we put into these houses, which tells us that if your wall is a 2x4 wall, you have to use R15. If it's a 2x6, you have to use this.
Well, that's where the modeling comes in, and that's what I do for you guys.
Okay.
Because there's 4 building codes. One is the prescriptive path. And prescriptive path, you look at a table in the code book and it tells you what to do. One of the reasons my business took off was when they changed the code in 2009, they changed the prescriptive code to R9, and that's why I got involved with guys like you. They changed the prescriptive to R19 versus it used to be R13.
Yeah.
So that was in the 2010-ish, if I remember correctly, and everybody was scrambling because they didn't want to go to 2x6 walls with R19. So that's the first way. The second way is the UA trade-off. The U value of a wall assembly is just the inverse of the R value. So you just do a little division there and it gives you U value. The UA trade-off allows you to do things like put R13 in your walls and put an R60 in your attic. You're just trading areas, but you're still going to get into some money. And we would do a res check for that. But for the simulated performance path, what we're doing for you guys, which is part of what you were talking about, the Ohio HBA one, you're taking into account the overall performance of the house. That modeling that I do will give you an estimated annual energy usage of the house. And like I was saying earlier, as we change things, used to be everybody thought they were just hitting it out of the ballpark by going to a 92% furnace.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing 94 and 96 is more of the norm than that. And 92s were such a huge upgrade because you got to go to the power vents.
Yeah.
You didn't have the B vent going through the whole house. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying. So as we change those numbers, change from an R13 to an R15, your annual energy usage goes down. So we model it that way and then circle back around at the end to do the blower door test.
When you say energy use, how does that calculate? Because I think about you're talking about heating and air conditioning equipment, and heating and air conditioning, heating and heat pump equipment, all of those things. But then if somebody lives with 6 kids in the house and they leave lights on all the time, does that screw up your numbers?
No. Well, because we're just looking, your lifestyle doesn't really come into play with it until you take it over.
Okay.
And when I say estimated annual energy usage, we're taking into account that in the summer, your thermostat's going to be set at 75, and in the winter, it's going to be set at 72.
Okay.
So there's baselines, and you go in, and I always tell people that you have to have a baseline because you look at, you and I, we've got kids, dogs. They open the door and leave it open until the dog comes back.
Yeah.
My parents, it's just the 2 of them, no pets. They stay inside for most of the day. So you can't predict overall. You're just predicting the expected usage, and then lifestyle comes into it. And it takes into account some lighting, whether they're incandescent LED, whatever, fluorescent, whatever they may be.
Do you look at the placement of the furnace in the basement? If it's in the center of the house, it's going to be more efficient than if it's on the left hand side, pushing all the way to the right hand side.
No, because we pretty much defer back to your HVAC contractor.
Yeah.
You know, we can look, your HVAC contractor's going to do manual J's, those types of things too.
Is it a manual J is the supply and the manual F is the return?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we don't, and I always tell people, because they'll ask me, and I say, your HVAC guy is the one that's going to have to warranty it.
Yeah.
I don't have to warranty it. So I'm not going to tell him how to do his job. I can look at it and tell you airflow issues, those types of stuff. But I don't think it's fair to tell somebody, you know, I don't come in and tell you how to do your job when you know you have to warranty that house.
I hope you're telling me how to do my job. That's what you're here for.
You know what I mean? But yeah.
I do know what you mean. But I mean, I'm looking for experts like you to say, hey, this is not the right way to do it. Mm-hmm. Here's the way to do it. And here's why. And that's why we focus on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is one of the most underrated ideas, the promotional marketing aspect that people use, HERS ratings and all this energy stuff like that. They'll use the hell out of it to market something. But when it comes to implementing the people who are going to do the work to make sure it performs to the correct standards, I think that is underrated. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about the people installing the insulation. You have to understand how insulation works. The preparatory work that gets to the point of insulation inside each cavity, making sure all the dirt's cleaned out of it, making sure it's fitting in each corner. Just all of the things that come along with the human aspect of it and taking the computer aspect out of it. That's super important.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're custom builders. So, I mean, we do a lot more things that are focused on those kind of things. I wonder if the majority of the houses in the world are production homes. Are those guys focused on those kind of things? Are they looking at all the details and because you know, another thing that brings this up to me is we look at our heating and air conditioning stuff, and I'm looking at the location because I'll move the air conditioner around to where it's not being seen somewhere. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we have to be conscious of how long does it take that refrigerant to get from one spot to another. Whereas on a production house, I'm gonna put it wherever I can to make the shortest run.
Correct. Reduce that line set, because copper costs money.
Yeah, exactly. And in a production house, they're probably going to run one main trunk line and one big cold air return, which kills the efficiency of the furnace. Where we're running multiple supply lines, multiple cold air returns, we're doing all this different flow and air stuff. So I just wonder if people are taking that into accountability when you're thinking about the energy ratings.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to talk about it, but not everybody has a build cycle time like you guys do. You take your time and get stuff right. So I would say at times you see people, I don't want to say cut corners, but not pay as much attention, because the goal is we got to get it in a drywall.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, that's when a lot of people take draws, that type, and you basically get a 2-week break from the house as a supervisor once you get somewhat into drywall, because your drywallers are going to take 2 weeks. Nothing else goes on inside of that house for 2 weeks.
I didn't think about that.
So I think there's people are getting a lot more conscious of it. Building inspectors are getting a lot more conscious of it. That at one time there was one county that didn't even have an insulation inspection.
Yeah. Well, there's still a handful of counties in Ohio that don't have any inspections at all.
Yeah, more of the rural ones, but yes, you're right. So I think everybody is starting to pay a little more attention to it. As we've evolved, in the old days, the old guys say, hey, house has to breathe.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time, and I get questioned, aren't you worried about what you're doing to these houses because they're too tight and they're not going to breathe? And, the building science has shown us that you'd rather have a house with 0 air changes, no leakage at all. But then you do have to introduce mechanical ventilation into it. I walked through that house over at in Loveland. So you guys had an ERV on that one.
Yeah.
That's great belts and suspenders. Hopefully you need it, because that means you built a really tight house.
Yeah.
And So, and I always tell people, we want to, like I say, you and I want to control how the airflow is in the house. When you go like the old guys say it's got to breathe, you need leakage, we're relying on Mother Nature.
Yeah. Well, human error.
Yes.
And
yeah.
Things not fitting together properly. You're like, oh, that's good. That's fine. It'll breathe.
Yeah. And then what you run into things like you might get mold on the back of your OSB because there's air leakage into that cavity. The dew point has moved to the other side of the insulation, causing mold.
Yeah.
Who's ever going to, unless you have, a major issue, when are you ever going to find that?
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah. When I was in college, we studied the super tight, super sealed. This is in the 90s, late 90s, super tight, super sealed, where one of my professors had built a house that had 2-inch polystyrene on the inside of it, had a 2x6 wall with R19, I believe, in the wall, had another layer of continuous insulation on the outside of the wall. I mean, you had to pour 12-inch wall in order for this stuff. And it's kind of similar to what Zip is doing, but the polystyrene's on the outside of the wall. And then it was so tight that they went through and created these ducts that they would build in the wall that had a flap on it. And you were basically creating like a mechanical flap to just poke a hole in the wall because it was so tight. Now we're using mechanical air changes in it.
Was that up in Oxford?
It was in Worcester.
Okay.
Yeah. He was up around Worcester area, which again, that's a completely different targeted area for the zone because
Correct.
It's stupid up there. I mean, with how cold and how much snow it gets. So that was where I was first introduced to the idea. And then we come down here and start building, and everybody's like, you can't do that stuff. You got to, you're building this, you're working on this. You got to pay attention to budgets, and people aren't going to pay for those things. And then it started to, we get into, like you said, into the 2000s, early 2000s, and coming to the mid, people started focusing on, they were getting more marketing materials and things thrown at them talking about the efficiencies. But then also, I think when you talk about, we're probably going to get into this here in a little bit, is the air barrier that we put on the outside of it. And it allows air to travel back and forth, allows moisture out, but doesn't allow moisture back in. And that came as a part of the code when we had a 1-inch air barrier for brick, 1-inch air gap for brick. And it didn't say 1 1/8. It didn't say 7/16. It said 1 inch. So if you didn't hold a 1-inch gap on that brick between the frame wall and the brick, you were in violation. So that 99.9% of the houses in the world were in violation. So then there was a city here, city of Mason started making us put tar paper on the walls.
That.
And they were like, you got to put tar paper on the whole outside of the house. That'll protect it. Well, then everybody put tar paper on the outside of the house, and then everybody that wouldn't breathe at all. And then, there was a couple builders here who had massive problems and even sent them down because of it, because the walls weren't breathing properly. So then Tyvek comes along and introduces to the building code, says you got to put a house wrap on the exterior of here. And if you have a house wrap on the outside of the house, now you don't have to maintain any kind of air gap in between there. You can put it right up against the wall. You can do whatever, which changed everything for everybody. And then, of course, Tyvek went skyrocketed and did really well. But I'll tell you when I look at, when we've got this in our notes here, to talk about Tyvek, talk about zip wall, and talk about EnviroDry. But Tyvek is, they had that whole building sciences with PPW, and they were really working, doing some good work inside their labs and learning about all these different things and the air changes. They were the trend. They were the pioneers of that. I feel like, don't you?
I agree. They used to hand out, I don't know if you remember these, they used to hand out Tyvek jackets that were made out of the Tyvek, and they were waterproof. Yeah. And it was a great marketing thing. And, I agree with you that Tyvek revolutionized everything. My problem with Tyvek is it's only as good as the guy installing it. And if you drive around, and I'm not just saying it's a Cincinnati issue, it's a nationwide thing. Yeah. That in order for it to be 100% efficient, nobody's installing it properly. Yeah. And then you get into, for it to be a true 100% weather barrier, you have to caulk the perimeters of it. And now you're looking at if you get a tear in it that's not patched, or there's any gaps in it, and you start getting condensation in there, it's got nowhere to go. Yeah. It's sitting at the bottom of that thing up against rotting your your OSB. So it's not that I'm not a believer in Tyvek. I'm not a believer in a lot of the guys that install it.
Yeah. And it's
hard. It's hard to do.
It is.
In fairness.
Well, we started putting it down, and this goes back to what we were talking about before. It's not just the product that you're using; it's the people who are installing it have to be experts and professionals at it. And we used to put it on as we were framing. So every time, if we framed a wall that was 8 foot long, the Tyvek was 10 feet long because we overlapped it.
Yep.
And then we got into it. There was guys that come out and they would start. You would frame the whole house, and then they would just install it continuous all the way around. And they would and Tyvek came out, and they would teach people how to install it. They would teach people how to frame with it. They would teach people how to set windows with it. And they're the ones that originated the flashing system. I talk about this all the time as far as our flashing systems around our windows. We used to not do anything at all.
Caulk on the flange.
I mean,
that was it.
If that, and then somebody come along. I think I saw Ray Murphy doing it in the 90s, where he would take a piece of look like HVAC duct tape that would wrap the top part of it and then come down about 6 inches on each side. And we're like, this guy is innovative. Yeah. I mean, he's got it going on. Look at this dude taking steps forward. And then this whole thing with Tyvek comes along, and it's like, man, you guys got to flash. We're putting flex wrap on the sill, and then we're running it up the sides, and we're putting this, and it's got this specific lab tested sticky stuff on the back of it that'll stick to anything. And that really set the pace for flashing the windows and making sure that everything was really good there. So much has changed with all of that. And that's what we call a paper product. And now we talk about the liquid products. So we use EnviroDry, which is we frame the house, we put it all together, and then we spray it with this I call it a liquid. I call it a breathable liquid that we put on the walls. And then there's a zip wall that you can use, which is already applied to the plywood when we bring it out. And so when you told me a couple times, you said, hey, don't change it. You're doing the right thing. You're doing what you need to be doing with the EnviroDry, because EnviroDry can be a pain in the ass. I mean, it's got to be, certain days. Nobody wants to install that stuff because it's really a mess. And it's difficult to work with around the job site. If it rains, it pushes you back, 3 or 4 days all the time. So do you still feel that way? I mean, when it comes down to these things?
I do. And if I, out of the three you just talked, I'd say EnviroDry is the best. Zip is a close second, because like you said, it's already applied. You're not dealing with trying to roll out the Tyvek. The biggest pain in the butt on Zip is taping the seams, but you get more out of that than you get out of Tyvek.
Okay.
And it gives you the ability to lap over your band boards, all that.
Yeah.
But the EnviroDry gives you from a continuous air barrier from sill plate to top plate of your second floor. And one of the high areas of leakage is your band boards, because unless you're not typically people don't lap their OSB down over it.
Yeah.
The OSB butts, and so you've got I mean, when was the last time you saw a straight 2x10?
Yeah.
And even with most people going to TGIs, you're still getting those gaps in the band boards. End of the day, we're dealing with an imperfect product in wood.
Yeah.
So you're getting those, and the EnviroDry continuously does all that.
And I think it's important that when you're talking about the band board, you're talking about, you have concrete from your foundation, your sill sealer, you have a 2x4, treated 2x4 there, 2x6, whatever it is. And then you have your rim joist coming down and sitting on top of that. And then on top of that, you have your plywood. And then on top of that, you have the base plate for your wall going up. So you've got multiple points of breakage right there. Correct. Where there's gaps and or possible gaps that are coming into play that you're talking about. And then, some of those OSBs require you to go all the way down just to keep the structure in place, to keep the shear together. But then some of them don't care. And then we have to flash all that whole area, which we flash all of it all the way across there all the time, just because it makes sense. Again, I think about what we used to do and what we used to do back in the day, because I'm a token old guy, is that we used to frame the wall, and as we're framing it, we would roll out this piece of plastic across the bottom of the wall that we're framing on top of the house. And we would just hope that, the guys didn't have a bad night the night before and they got it all straight. It wasn't all buckled and kinked, and then we'd fold it up there. It didn't get ripped off. And then sometimes you'd see guys just cutting it because it was in the way. And that was our method of flashing the foundation. foundation. And now it's just it's a whole nother trade that comes out and does all these things. So super important. I don't know how we got off onto this subject. It was we were talking about something else, and then we jumped in. This was on my list. The thing that when we talk about let's talk about zip, and for EnviroDry, we get the whole house painted, or we get the whole house framed, and we come in and basically spray this permeable liquid that goes on the walls. It hits every square inch of the exterior wall area, gable areas, anything that protects the wood. It does a really good job. For zip, this is a material. It's also a liquid that comes out on the plywood already. So which means that when the guys put the plywood up on the walls, now they have to seal each joint with a zip. They've got a little roller that's got a Z in it to make sure that they know that you rolled it on there. And then the pain in the butt part of this is you got to get somebody to come in and seal all the nail holes too, because you can, I don't know if you can spray it or whatever you do, but we come back in and just sit there and caulk each nail. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to follow a specific nailing pattern with a certain PSI coming out of your gun, so that on OSB we drive those nails in, and they may be an 1/8 inch into the OSB, but as soon as you start breaking that coating of the zip, you're getting into what you're saying.
Yep, you have to seal it up.
Yeah,
and then, but I think the greatest thing about zip is when you go to get away from just the plywood and you go to the air barrier or the insulation barrier they have a 1/2 inch, and then they have up to 1.5 inches or 2 inches. I think that it comes out on the plywood, and then with the zip wall already on the outside of it, the zip barrier on the outside of it. So what this does is it allows for continuous insulation going over top of every stud and all of those things. So is that something that we need to be not concerned with, but is that a definite advantage?
Well, one of the advantages with what you're talking about is when I put houses into the computer program, I do a takeoff on the house, how many lineal feet, how many square footage of walls, blow, everything, windows, all that stuff. And one of the inputs when I build a wall section is insulation. And you have cavity insulation and continuous insulation. Okay. The bump, as far as what I do, the bump for continuous insulation is pretty significant, because when you're looking at the overall, we talked about earlier, the overall U value of the whole wall assembly. And so what goes into that, you've got your 1/2 inch of drywall. You've got your 2x4s. You have to put what they're spaced on center, so you can figure how many 2x4s. The computer does it for you, but it figures how many 2x4s are in that wall. Then you have your insulation, and then whatever your exterior sheeting is. So for the wall assembly, you have thermal breaks as 2x4s. Yeah. So that R13, that the U value of that wall, even though it's all R13, may go down to, if you convert to an R value, it may go down to an R like 11 or 12 based off of the thermal bridging.
Because of the 2x4 has less of an R value than the insulation value. So what we're talking about is we would take a piece of styrofoam, for lack of a better term, and it's a 4x8 sheet, and you're putting it on the outside of the wall, and now you've got insulation that goes all across the wall instead of going stud space, stud, stud space, stud, stud space, stud.
Yeah. So if you put the 1/2 inch out there, at the 1/2 inch is what, like an R3.5, I think. Yeah. You get a full R3.5 for the entire length of that wall.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, we go back to this marketing piece, and when we were first getting into this, there was guys talking about using 2x6 walls, and they were talking about the energy efficiency and how crazy their houses were calculating, or rating. But then what they were doing was they were doing 2x6s 2 foot on center. And now you have less stud frame members in the wall, and you have more insulation. And I'm still against that 100%, just because I think that when most people think about a stud in a wall, they think about point load, how the house is sitting down, and 2x6 is stronger than that, and so forth. But really, what we're worried about in the building industry is a shear. How the house moves, but when the wind blows and when something's going on with the weather and just with the sunshine, and we have days in Ohio that they start out at 38 in the morning and they go to 85 in the afternoon.
Yeah, we hit 3 seasons in 12 hours.
Crazy, that expansion and contraction. So all of those things come into play, and I like to have as many stud frame members in that wall to protect for that and not less. But it's good. You get a lot of energy efficiency out of it. Your house might fall down if the wind blows too hard, but it'll be all right.
and we were just talking about the air barriers, and I always tell people, I'll give you a house, if an untrained person, because everybody always wants to say, well, obviously 2x6 walls are better because they're stronger and you get an R19 in it. And I tell somebody that says that to me, I say, I will give you a house that has 2x8 walls on it. You put in R30 in the walls. So I'm going to take a 2x4 house with R13 in it, and I said I'll get it to outperform yours.
Yeah.
Because, and we've slowly, people have started coming around. When you and I first started in this business, it was just, hey, make sure you get the R value right.
Yeah.
Well, now with the performance path, where air leakage means just as much, if it actually means more than insulation values.
Yeah.
Because like I said, this guy has a 2x8 wall. I've got a 2x4 wall. I seal that thing up. All my energy's staying in.
Yeah.
And I don't care not that I don't care what the insulation value is, but I'm more concerned with airflow.
Yeah.
And air infiltration, where if you don't do anything, your R30 isn't going to perform like you think it is.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with everything you're saying. I'm thinking of the technical parts, and I always think about what we used to do. And when I first started building, we used an unfaced insulation, which means it was just the nasty insulation that was in the wall. And then they'd come along with a 4 mil polyurethane plastic, and then they would staple it up on the wall and seal the wall up. And if you came in there in an early morning, and you didn't have the heating and air conditioning on yet in the house, of course, because you're in the insulation phase, that whole interior of that plastic would be wet because it was just dying. It was crazy. And then we went to a craftback vapor barrier on the insulation, which I thought was really good. And this is when you see the insulation, it's got the R19, whatever it is, stamped on the back of it, and it folds out to where the guys can staple it onto each stud. It's made specifically for stud spaces, and then that's our air barrier. But so when you think about the wall section, you said drywall, but you also calculate the paint, don't you, as a vapor barrier in there? And then,
yes.
So you go paint, drywall, and then whatever's in between your stud cavity, insulation and studs. And then you have plywood, and then you have your air barrier on the outside of it, and then you go into whatever's happening with the brick
and everything, and that's a good point. You have to specify what your exterior is also. Brick, there's an option for brick, stone, vinyl siding, aluminum siding, which I don't even know if they make it anymore, but
I hope not.
And then a hardboard, which would be like your hardy board.
Yeah.
So that does play into the overall U value of the wall.
Well, I think people would be freaking out if they knew the temperature that air gap gets behind the brick in between the stud frame walls. So if it's 80 degrees outside, sometimes that temperature inside that gap is 130, 100 and something degrees, that's in there.
Very similar to the attic.
Yeah, very similar to the attic. It bakes on there, and you can feel it. If you go on the south wall of a brick wall, you can just feel it and just how hot it is. And that's why we make weep holes. That's why we do all those things to try and let that air out there. But that's, again, you're not just talking about the temperature that the weather lady says on the news in the morning. You're talking about the way your house is reacting to the temperature that goes on, and those are the calculations you make. So this is all such. I think it's super interesting. I think people probably listening to it or home are going, I've got to turn this off.
I feel like a nerd at times, but when I start talking like this, and I've got a couple buddies, different buddies, but my one buddy, he owns an insulation company, and he gets mad. He gets mad because people say he's too expensive and nobody wants to upgrade to an R15 or this and that. And I always tell him, I said, listen, how many times have you been into somebody's house, brand new house, and they say, I got to show you something? lay out their energy bill and start telling you, I've got R15 behind this.
Yeah.
They did a liquid applied air barrier. No, they're bringing in, you see my granite? How do you like my custom cabinets?
Yeah.
And it's something that it's something that you and I fight because we're passionate about it, but you as the builder have to, and that's where I like working with you guys is it's like, let's spitball this and try to find something that's going to improve it, but not price you out of the build.
Yeah.
Because you and I could sit here and try to get to, zero air changes, net zero, whatever, but we would end up, one, pricing you out of being the builder, and two, you have to be careful about diminishing returns because everything, especially with your equipment, one of the things we'd put on our bolts was geothermal. Geothermal is great, but at times it could outprice you may have to start putting money into it. And at that point, you're resetting the timer basically on your payback on it.
I'm glad you said that because you said a couple things in there that made me think about this. First of all, you heard me at the breakfast talk about I want everybody to be a nerd. I mean, about every single thing that you're doing, you should be geeked out, super excited about it. I don't care if everybody else cares about it or not. This is your profession. This is what you decided to do. We're manufacturers and we're all putting these pieces together. And if you're not a nerd about it, get out, man. I mean, we need somebody who loves this stuff and just goes crazy about it, just like what you're talking about here. And that makes all the difference in the world. The other thing that we're talking about, when you talk about return on value, there's a reason why we always say we don't build by the building code because it's the bare minimum. But there's got to be a point in the United States of America where you can't make all these things that you and I are talking about standard in every house because then the most affordable houses in the world would no longer be affordable. So it needs to be a customer choice. And so you can base it out with the bare minimum that's going to make the house efficient, more efficient than it was in the 80s. But it's going to be I don't want to say I call them neighborhood houses. A neighborhood house, even if you did the bare minimum, which is the building code, it's still going to perform well. Now, all these other things that we're talking about, with zip and with the EnviroDry and with all the insulation board and upgrading 2x6s and things, these are all things that I think that my customers expect. And I say I'm nerding out about it, and they get excited about countertops, but they're not excited about their utility bill unless it's too high. But they would have expected us to, when they come to build a house with Wheel and Builders, you're probably supposed to be doing that.
Yeah, I think it's.
I don't want to walk into my house and see and find out that you were cheaping everything out just to make the deal happen. But then when you talked about the return on the value of what the return on whatever you're paying, that is a huge point because sometimes you look at things like geothermal, and if you're going to be in this house 5 years and you're going to move, don't do a geothermal because you're not going to get your money back.
Correct.
Out of it. And if you do geothermal, your utility bills are not going to be zero. I mean, they're going to be less, maybe, but they're not going to be zero. And you're talking about putting a whole lot of money into that system. So then, like you're talking about, we value it. We look at different things we can do to make sure that we're staying in the price point, but we're not just doing stupid things with people's money. And I think about that when you talk about the furnace, and then you get into variable speed furnaces, 2-stage furnaces, and then you get into dual fuel air conditioning, heat pump systems.
Thermostats playing into it. I mean, the thermostats are crazy anymore. I could change the temperature at my house right now on my phone if I wanted to.
Programmable thermostats.
And just the different, they've come so far in programming them, because the thing with the programmable thermostat, what a lot of people don't realize is it's only like a 4 or 5 degree temperature difference. Once you go below that, you're burning more fuel to get back up to your original than what you saved in the time. So, but the new thermostats will do that for you. That stuff.
I mean, all of this technology, I'd say all of this technology, most of the technology is really good. But I do think that, so what you do, so let's touch on a couple different points. I want to make sure that we cover everything because you had some really good thoughts here. But we talked about what does HERS mean, and what does it get you, and what's the point of it?
So it's Home Energy Rating System. And what it does, baseline is 100 for a new build. They say houses built, and you're probably talking more like 15 to 20 years ago now. 20-ish. They say that those houses typically would score at a 130. 100 is basically your baseline, and then it's like a golf score. The lower, the better.
Mm-hmm.
So then, as you and they tout it as the miles per gallon for a house.
Okay,
is the simplest way to do it.
Yeah.
So as your score goes down, the better you are.
And so an old house is roughly 130.
Correct.
What do we want our houses to be today?
60s.
Okay.
I think. I mean, and you guys are hitting that.
Yeah.
High 50s, low 60s, and that's very good.
Yeah. What about net zero energy houses? So what does that fall into whatever you're doing or anything like that, or is that more like?
Yes, I can figure
Okay.
net zero,
Right.
and I did a couple for a builder, and I started because one of the things that REM rate can do is it's called an improvement analysis, and you put in two options. Or even just, I think you put in, it's been a while since I did it, but you put in two options and then the cost for each of them. And it'll say, the better option is going to it's going to take you 6.2 years to recoup your money on that. But going back, I was doing this with this guy that was doing a net zero, and it gets back to what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about geothermal. All the additional stuff it did to get to net zero, he would have to be at $0 billing monthly for it was like 22 years.
Yeah.
So you look at your hot water heater, because he did solar and all that stuff, and I don't even know I know they vary, but what the lifespan of a solar panel is, because it's not infinite.
Right.
And then you got storage with it. Those Tesla batteries are over $10,000 a piece.
Yeah.
And then like I said, your equipment, hot water heater, geothermal, all that stuff, by the time you recoup your zero energy, you're going to be replacing that. And in my mind, you're starting the clock over when you do that, or resetting it at least.
And net zero means that you have zero energy. You're using zero energy from the utility company.
Combination, yeah, not necessarily. It is that you will still use some energy from it, but you're also, because you have solar, you're selling back your demand of what you didn't. So you really only have to you probably have to get your Duke energy, depending on the size of your house, what it is, you need to get that down to like 30% of what it normally was.
Okay.
And then you pay that 30%, but, well, technically don't pay it because they give you credit for what you didn't use of theirs.
Looking at an Excel spreadsheet when you get your utility bill, trying to come up with the checks and balances of it.
Yes.
So then we talk about green building and LEED efficiency. And this is more popular in inner city stuff, where you're probably, the reason why people are doing it is because they're getting a tax break on it. But this is one of the most interesting builds that we've done them. We've done 3 of them. We did 2 golds and 1 platinum, and we did one up in Mainville. That one that we did up there, that it was in Rivercrest. Mm-hmm. That one should have been at least a gold, and the guy didn't want to test it for some reason. But this is 100-point something checklist of things that we're doing, and it's almost like a game. I mean, it is a game.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you're doing so many different things to get points to take to the government and said, we did all these things. We want a credit on our taxes for being LEED efficient, green efficient. So with some of it I can get along with. I'm like, man, this is pretty cool stuff. This makes sense. But then you get points for putting a bike rack out front. You get points for being so close to a park. You get points for
bus line.
All this. That's how you end up with your platinum, or even sometimes your gold. But when you think about the heating and air conditioning systems, like you were talking about the ERV, all that heating and air conditioning stuff, which that house is a guy he works for he's an engineer for a heating and air conditioning supply company.
Okay.
So that thing's got a ton of stuff in there that
I noticed.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But so I enjoyed learning about the LEED. I enjoyed probably building about it, but at the end of it is, I'm not really sure if it's something that anybody out in the county would do.
No, it's I'd say probably 95 to 90% of the time you see it, it's tied to some government program.
Yeah.
You see it a lot. We really only run across it in the residential realm when you cross into the city.
Yeah.
And I think the intentions with it were good. I think it was a little misguided in the city because it originally was meant for urban revitalization, like downtown and all that.
Yeah.
And it spread so far out that then, I mean, you look at Homerama. I mean, you're getting into $3 and $4 million houses
Yep.
that aren't paying taxes on it.
Yeah.
And good for them for being able to do it. But I think, like I said, I think it missed the mark a little bit. I think LEED it's a good program in what they're trying to do. I just feel like a lot of times you're walking past a dollar to pick up a nickel.
And I was going to say the same thing because the people that especially the Platinum House that we did, I mean, the money that they threw at that thing. And I'm like, I get it. You're saving quite a bit of money on your taxes, but at some point it feels like you're trading dollars and now maybe that's what the government wanted, I mean, they wanted to trade dollars and have efficient houses, but the value that goes into that, man, you got to be there a long time to make sure you're getting that back.
Yeah. And in the city of Cincinnati, the tax abatement's only for 15 years.
Yeah.
So you live there for 20 years, you go 15 years without paying taxes. And most of them, the answer is yes, but are you going to be able to afford that house? And what is the resale of that house when after 15 years? Because you benefited, if you sell it at year 14 and somebody gets 1 year, you did good. You got out in time.
Yeah.
But as far as LEED goes, you see it majority of the time it's tied to some kind of government money. You're seeing it in all the schools, all the new school builds, government buildings, a lot of banks because they take government money to build their banks, military bases, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So my point is we don't run across it that much in the residential.
And we don't either.
It's cost prohibitive end of the day.
Yeah. And again, the only reason we would do it is if a customer come to us and said, we want you to build this house LEED. And I'm like, well, do whatever, man. That sounds like a fun project, but it's going to be a ton of money. And you're not, and even at that point, you're not saving tons of money on your efficiency. I mean, you just did things differently to make it perform differently. And it's
a lot more clean building, with you're talking about the points. I know, there's a recycle content. Points, and then there's you have to figure out where your materials are coming from to get, if we're getting all of our stuff from California, we're not going to get as many points as if we're buying it in Westchester, Ohio.
The crazy thing about that is because they want to know where you're getting your drywall from, where you're getting your brick from, because they're worried about the trucking and the different efficiencies it takes to get it there, and the exhaust fumes and everything like that. And we had a couple sites where the dirt work on the site was crazy. I mean, just crazy, $200,000. And I mean, we're trucking off of these things for like 3 weeks. We're running equipment. We got 6 pieces of equipment running. We're building retaining walls. We're doing all these things to it. And I said, how does this affect the LEED building process? I mean, how many points do we get deducted for doing this? And they're like, we don't take any points. We don't care about that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
Yeah. If anything, you got points for the retaining walls.
Yeah. I mean, we probably got points for the retaining wall because we did some hardscape. That's what you get points for that. But I mean, all that equipment and kicking all that fumes in the air. And I mean, they're like, we don't care about that. Don't worry.
That's kind of where I was going with the walking past a dollar to pick up a nickel.
Yep. Exactly. So, I think that, like I said, we tell people that we test it beforehand and we test it afterwards. And I want to get back to that with you when we start getting the paperwork put together on the front end and say, hey, let's look at it, what we tested on the beginning, and then look at the blower door. Let's talk about this blower door test. Because I think I describe it very briefly to our customers to say that when we're doing this door test at the end, it's making it feel like there's like 25-mile-an-hour winds coming at every corner of the house. And the more resistance that the fan has, that's the better the house is performing. That's a very lame term. So, I mean,
it's pretty accurate. So the door just, we have a frame with a vinyl curtain on it, and it has a hole in it that a fan goes in. Set the frame up in typically the front door. And when the fan runs, it's putting your house under a negative pressure. The fan is basically trying to suck all the air out of the house. Now, as it's going out, there's a manometer that's reading the flow of air over the head of the fan, which gives us a CFM. And as it's being sucked out, air is coming in from leakage points to make up for it. And we'll get that CFM, and then we can convert that CFM into an air changes per hour.
So wouldn't it make a difference if the houses had, if I had a 2-story cathedral ceiling, had 10-foot walls, and does any of that volume make a difference in there?
Absolutely, it does, because I mean, this is another example. I've had people, and when you're talking about, what'd you call it, the neighborhood builders, you get people that say, hey, we have the A model, they have the A model, our utility bill is $150 more than theirs. And you start breaking it down. First of all, I can't tell you guys, it's like we talked earlier, I can't tell you how your lifestyle affects it.
Yeah.
But I can give you some science behind it, because this guy with the higher bill has, like you said, 9-foot walls, vaulted ceilings. The other guy has 8-foot walls, flat ceilings. So where that comes into effect, and that's the other thing, that if somebody says, hey, what should my bill be? My house is a 1,500 square foot ranch. We don't square footage gives us very little information. It's the volume that gives you the information.
Okay.
Volume of the whole house, because when we're figuring volume, we include the basement as well, because it is conditioned area.
Okay.
Even though it's not finished, you still are running heating air down there. You have to keep it, right. So we take the volume of the basement into consideration, and then I figure out volume on, if you have a 2-story great room, that actually because you heat space, not footage.
Yeah.
So that 2-story great room, and your HVAC guy is figuring this also, because if you have a 20 by 20 great room, but it's 2 stories, 9 foot over 8 foot, you're actually having to condition, if you converted it back to the square footage that everybody wants to talk about, you're actually conditioning 800 square feet instead of the 400 that you're standing on. So it greatly impacts, because what we do is we take that blower door number, multiply it by 60, and then divide it by the volume, the cubic volume of your house, which then gets you that air changes that I was talking about.
So does it have any effect if I'm putting a blower door test on a 1,900 square foot house, or I'm putting a blower door test on a 10,000 square foot house? On that 10,000 square foot house, is that fan, does it change the CFM of the fan? Does any of that stuff change because it's pulling more volume?
No. So what it is, the fan has 3 rings on it, and each one of them is removable. So you have an A, B, C ring, and then you can have it open. And on our manometer, you have to pick which one you're doing. Majority of the houses test with the A ring on. So, and they'll test fine. As you get into tighter houses, you may have to choke that down to the B, but and the manometer takes into account how big of an area it's sucking through. So to get to your point, that 10,000 square foot house that may have 12 foot, you may have to you probably have to go with the fan open, all the way open, nothing on it, and there's a good chance you may have to use 2 blower door tests.
Okay,
there's one right up there. You're in that neighborhood behind Camargo Cadillac at the end of the road. Yeah, we had to put 2 fans on that one. Yeah, right next to the house you guys built.
Yeah, on John's house here. Yeah, that I would think that thing would. 2 would be the minimum.
Mm-hmm. I was wondering if we were going to get it with 2.
Yeah. So a blower door test is like you said, it's a huge bag that you put on the front door or a door opening. Everything else has to be closed up. Turn this fan on. The fan is sucking the air out of the house, and this is revealing the how tight the house is. I mean, if we didn't do all of those window flashings, if we didn't insulate it the right way, if we didn't caulk things, if we didn't seal that whole band area up that we were talking about before, and if your windows are garbage, and if you didn't do a good job up in the attic, all of these things are, it's gonna just fly through there. It's just gonna be very low resistance. But if we do things the way we're supposed to, it's gonna have a lot of resistance. You're gonna get a higher rating, which is what we want.
And it sucks. It pulls hard enough.
It certainly does suck.
It pulls hard enough that if something's leaking, you can feel it
Really?
coming. And the interesting thing is, when people come around, or if a homeowner or builder's there and they say, hey, I want to see you do this. First thing they do is they go and start feeling around their windows and all that. And then they'll feel an outlet. And because of the less resistance in the ceiling, you can go on, if it's a 2-story, go to an interior wall on on the second floor and feel an outlet, and you'll feel air coming through.
Really?
Yeah, because it's pulling it from the attic.
Have you ever done a chalk buck test where you go out to the outside and you squeeze a sponge or something like that, and it's got chalk, or it's got like a cloud of dust that it kicks up, and you turn that blower door test on and you stand outside the window and you squeeze that, and if that dust, you can see it
I have
move.
Smoke puffers.
Yeah, smoke puffers,
Yeah.
and I've seen that years ago on a house, and that I don't know what we were looking at it for, and I mean it was the people had to be so embarrassed. I mean, this chalk was just like, it was like the window was open.
Yeah,
I'm like, holy shit! If I was them, I would be postering this all over. I think it was before the internet, but you could blast it all over the internet, and that's a big telltale sign. So I was going to talk about a couple of different things that we do in regard to some things that you've taught me over the years, but I don't know if I want to release those secrets. I mean, I don't want everybody to.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I think the main thing is that I talk about a lot of things on here, because if somebody's building a house or thinking about building a house anywhere in the world, that maybe they should look at these things. Number one is that we sheet the interior or the exterior of the wall that abuts the attic. If you have a long hallway that has attic on the other side of it, livable space. If you have a bedroom, if you have a garage, all these different things, they all need to be sheeted with a plywood or something like that, and then insulated in there, and then drywalled, of course.
To that point, Jeff, the reason we do that is that you're supposed to have 6 points of contact on your insulation: front, back, side, top, bottom.
Yeah.
And when you don't do that what you're talking about, leave the back of it exposed to the attic.
Yeah.
That piece of insulation is basically like a furnace filter.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to stop the flow of that air. And you're talking in summer, what's an attic get up to? 150 degrees?
Yeah.
So
at least
that's why people in the past used to hate having bedrooms over garages.
Yeah.
Because nobody did that.
Yeah, it wasn't. They were thinking it was the garage underneath, and you're forgetting that it's not. It's the attic. It's the sidewalls and stuff. And another thing on that point is that I just wrapped up a remodel back 2 years ago for one of my doctors, and we don't remodel, but I mean we were working down the street, and I really liked the guy, but I had to do some stuff up in the attic, and it had this old nasty insulation that was maybe blown in. But after that time, it settled so much, and it turned into almost a solid. And you think about those same thing on those interior walls that don't have any backing to them, how much that stuff just falls down. And how many times are you getting up in the attic doing an inspection on that kind of stuff? So that was really important. And then the other thing that we like to do, 2x6 walls are really important, and for not only the insulation thickness and the value of it, but think about your outlets and think about your switches and switch boxes, and making sure that you're getting insulation behind those areas in all of those walls. And that's a crazy reason to do it, but by gosh, it's an important reason to do it.
It makes sense because I was out on a service call for a builder not too long ago. Well, it was cold. It was one of those really cold days, and I was shooting it with my thermal imaging camera.
Yeah.
And they kept having me shoot the outlets. I mean, it was that day, I think when I was there, it may have been like 24 degrees outside. And I had to explain to them, your outlets really don't look that bad, even though they're screaming bright blue. I said, because you got to realize that outlet box is it's 2 1/4 deep, I think, and then comes out half an inch. But so you're really only getting, if you're lucky, an inch of insulation behind that outlet box.
Yeah.
It's essentially uninsulated part of the wall.
And if you got anybody, the guys putting that in there, if they jam it back in there and they're not laying in I mean, that's the other thing. The insulation is supposed to work in 1 million layers, right? And so when they say it's R15 and it's supposed to be 3.5 inches thick, if you crush it and smash it down around windows and doors and behind outlets, now it's an R1 because it's just a solid back there. It doesn't have all the millions of layers to go through, and that's something that's really important. But we have been caulking all of or not caulking, but foam sealing all the top plates in the attic and going around there. And one job that we had, we went around and did that around all the can lights. And well, everybody uses LED lights anymore, and they don't get hot. Well, those can lights, if you put an old light in there, light bulb in there, well, they get stupid hot. So we went back to the manufacturer. We chased this for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we wanted them to. Everybody says it's not a problem. Don't worry about it. It's not a problem. It's not going to catch on fire because you did this. But nobody would put it in writing to say it's not going to catch on fire. So we ended up having to go back and pop all of that stuff off of there. I think we even replaced the can lights because it had stuff on it. But it was because those things get so stupid hot. But that's another area for those can lights. That's another area that is a huge energy loss on there. Because they poke up into the attic.
Yeah, you're cutting a hole in your ceiling.
Cutting a hole in the ceiling, and I mean most of our houses have 160 something can lights in there, and that's a lot of holes to poke in the ceiling. So another thing I was going to ask you about, and I know we got to wrap it up, but another thing I was going to ask you about was in the attic, and this is probably uncalculable, but if you put an attic fan that circulates or removes the hot air out of the attic, as long as you have good ventilation everywhere else, that would have to be a huge efficiency.
I would say
charmer,
yes. I would say yes, as long as you're sealing up that ceiling plane, because what you run the risk of is you're only going to be able to take out as much air as is coming in.
Yeah,
which is your soffit vents.
Yeah,
or maybe a gable vent. You would have to balance that so you don't create a negative pressure from your house.
So it's funny you say that. We're building a house for a guy who's a commercial builder right now, and we've done this multiple times. Built houses for commercial guys, and I enjoy it just because they're super into it. I mean they're building nerds just like we are, so they're excited about it. But he came to me one day and says, "Hey, I don't think you have enough." I don't think you have enough ventilation coming from your soffit vents, then calculating everything going up through the ridge vents. And so we talked about it, and we went back to the architect, and his calculations were for the house only and didn't calculate the porches and the garages, which then evens it all out. But it's something I sat there and thought about, and I'm like, I've never done a calculation on here. I just assumed that somebody
there
did.
Is.
And Mark, our architect, I mean, he knows, and there's a formula that they use.
Yes.
But again, it brings up the question. I've been doing this my whole life, and I've never sat there and gone, is that enough ventilation coming out of that soffit? I'm just assuming, yeah, it probably is. But it's the exchange rate that goes through there.
And I just helped my buddy. My buddy's building a house, and his house, it's like 2,800 square foot ranch. So it's got a big footprint, and it's hip roofs. And with the trusses being as long as they are, I mean, from his top plate to the peak of the roof, I think it was 17 feet.
Yeah.
And because of all that, the hips took away too much of his ridge vent. He was not going to be able to get enough venting. He probably has too much because of the perimeter of his house for his soffit venting. So we did some calculations, and he ended up putting in 2 power vent fans.
Yeah.
Just for that reason, because he had more coming in than he had going out.
I had that a couple times where on those hips, because there's just so few of the peaks that where you don't have enough lineal footage, and we'll come back in and put a couple 750s on the sides or going different places to make sure that you get that. And that, again, I don't know if that was necessarily calculated as much as it was like, hey, this probably doesn't look right, let's figure this out. So now it's all calculated. But man, what a crazy thing. This is the stuff that I talk about all the time because I love it, is that we geek out on it, and the customers are rarely coming to us going, hey, let's look at these numbers. They're not. I think that they expect us to figure all these things out. They expect a certain level of us paying attention to these things, but I don't think anybody understands the science and the technology that goes into it. And if you want to use the HERS ratings as a marketable piece in your all the things you're doing, that's great. But you damn well better make sure that you've done the calculations. And I talk to our heating and air conditioning guys all the time about manual J's and manual F's. And I don't want them just putting in systems that, like they're looking at it and they're going, I think you can do it for 5. I don't think that's a good idea. So all of these things are calculations that come into the energy efficiency of your house. They come into the quality of the indoor air quality, is something you and I didn't really even talk about, but it's the indoor air quality. It's not necessarily just heating and cooling. It's how you feel and how you're breathing. Yep. And how much it could add lifespan to your life by having a better quality indoor air quality in your house. So man, I can't thank you enough. We've been working together a long time.
Yeah.
And like I said, this is the stuff that I get geeked out about. I know you do too. And we appreciate you working. You don't have a lot of interface with the customers. Usually at this point, if I'm talking to one of our trade partners, I'm talking about how, when our customers go and meet with you and they go do this, this is something altogether different. And it's a lot of, and we don't have a lot of interface together.
A lot of behind the scenes stuff.
A lot of behind the scenes.
And with me, no news is good news.
Yeah.
If I'm calling you because of one of my tests, it's we got issues.
If you randomly called me on a Tuesday, I'd be like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So, hey man, like I said, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to be here. Thanks for doing all the things you do. And so what else? What else do you have to add? Is there anything else you need to say? What did we miss?
We covered a lot.
I think we did.
We covered a lot. And I just, I think like we were talking earlier, it's something that needs to be paying attention to. We, meaning you and I, need to, and I feel like we've done a really good job with what you guys do, find that happy medium of where we're giving the customers more than they really know they're getting, but keeping it affordable. Yeah. And it's like you talked about the foam in the top plates in the attic. I mean, one of your houses takes what, 3-4 cans? Yeah. So you put $50 into material on that.
Is that all it is?
Or what? But I mean,
Kyle tells me it's something different.
I don't know. But anyway, I mean, it's an affordable way.
I agree.
And it stops that stack effect. I'm telling you, those four cans of foam would change your blower door number. It could cut it by 30-40%.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge.
And
something
it's just
cheap.
simple things like that you're paying attention to.
I'm really good friends with my insurance guy, and we talk about you could be an insurance junkie, like meaning you can have insurance for everything. You can overpay just to cover, and all of it is a just in case. But I think that building a house, there's certain things that you can just keep going crazy on, and like you're talking about, the value can outweigh the cost of, or the cost can outweigh the value of it, and then you get upside down. So you really have to pay a lot of attention to what you're doing. And I also think, so I keep talking about, hey, this is what our customers expect Wheeland Builders to be providing already when they come to us, just because of the way we sell ourselves, the way we build houses. If you're a customer out there, I would not assume that my builder is doing all of this stuff rolling into them. And don't go into them like, I know you're screwing me. Don't do that. Yeah. Go in and have the conversation with them and say, hey, when we talk about energy efficiency, what are you doing? And what kind of details can you give me? Don't talk about insulation. Let's talk about the installation of the insulation and all the things that go along with it. Call Brad Elkowitz from Focus Energy and have him come out, do some numbers on it. Because will you work with, like I call it retail, will you work with an individual homeowner and do those kind of things? If you're in one of those situations with a builder where you're doing a lot of the work, and it's kind of like, I don't want to name off a couple of those guys that do that stuff, but the homeowners are very involved in the building process. Call Brad and have him run some numbers on it. Have him come out and do some inspections and lay out what your builder should be doing. That would be super helpful for that, because that's what they do for us. So
there is just to piggyback on that, Jeff. You do have to take some precautions because you can do the best job air sealing, but like we talked earlier, if you're not getting your ventilation right, that's when you're going to have, when we first started doing this, the big thing was builders would get calls from customers, hey, I've got mold on my windowsills. You go out there and look it's mildew. It's not mold, but it's from not having enough, we didn't have enough ventilation in these houses. So in the morning, the dew on the windows would just rain.
Yeah.
And, people are going to work. They didn't know it. Then they come home and there's mildew on their windowsill. You have to be responsible when you do it.
Yeah.
Or else you're going to create yourself problems and possible health situations.
How true. I was always, I know we could keep talking. I was always concerned about how, because there's, I've heard guys say down south there's certain James Hardy products that won't work in the south that work up here, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. And there's certain paints that you can only use. There's certain shingles that you can't use. And I was wondering that about down south they use different air barriers in Florida and some of them southern states than what we use up here. There's different products that work better down there. I was concerned with our EnviroDry and how it would react with a closed cell or an open cell foam, because it changes the interior makeup of that wall, and it turns out we don't really necessarily have a problem, but man, you got to ask the question, because
absolutely,
and we think we're like, it's more expensive and it's going to be better, but is it? It's not just about the material. Yeah, the materials are better, but how's that going to perform? And the performance is so important. I'm glad you said that, because that is important. Don't let them just kind of do it.
Yeah,
we did all this stuff and you're pounding your chest and really you made it worse.
Because that's the way we've done it for the last 20 years.
Yeah, don't do that either. Because I can tell you that I've been doing this a long time, and you'll hear me Alicia always makes fun of me because I'm like, been doing this 30 years full time, been doing it 52 my whole life. And does that make it right? I've learned so much is usually what I'm referring to. I've learned all these different things. Very important to make sure that you're just not following suit because you've been doing it so long. But for real, call Brad, because that's what I do. And we're a professional in the industry. So Focus Energy is giving us our energy reports. They're telling us what we need to do better. They're testing our houses before we build them. They're testing our houses after we build them. We're giving reassurance to our customers that this is the best possible thing we could have done for their house. So, man, thanks again. I'm glad to have you here. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're on the team as always. And man, you've been here a long time. Yeah. So thank you.
I appreciate your business and your friendship with all you guys.
Yeah. Definitely. We're the same way. Hey, it's Brad Elkowitz with Focus Energy Group right here on the WB Download. Well, I warned you. I had to tell you early on in the beginning there that what a great conversation that was going to be with Brad and how well that went. I think it's very technical stuff. You have to listen to it all the way through to really understand what he's talking about and what we're talking about and the things that we're circling around. But really important stuff that we focus on. Like I said, I think most of our customers probably expect most of this, but they don't expect the detail and the calculations that go into it. Yeah, we're going to do that, but don't understand how we get to it. Same thing with our heating and air conditioning stuff. How do we get to that point? Are we just, rolling the dice? Or are we doing calculations? We're doing calculations. Things that we're learning every single day. So thank you again, Brad Elkowitz, Focus Energy. Awesome job, man. Thanks for being a part of this team for so long. Man, we're grateful for you as always. And I want to thank the audience once again for listening and tuning in. I continue to be surprised as far in. The other day I was at a Hummerama and ran into somebody and they said, "Hey, I was listening to the podcast the other day." And I thought, wow, that is so cool. Thank you for listening. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I hope you're learning something. If you got something you want me to talk about or you got somebody you want me to interview, reach out to me. I'd love to talk to people. I'd love to talk to people on here. Love for the world to learn about what this story is and what you got going on. So email me at wbdownload@wielandbuilders.com. download at wielandbuilders.com. Don't forget that our episodes drop on the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month. Don't forget to subscribe to the download, the WB Download, on every one of your podcast services, wherever you get your podcast from, and check us out on YouTube as well. I think the next episode is going to be Gabrielle from Ensweiler and Associates. She does an awesome job. She's one of our architects, and she just kicks butt all the time. And I think her dad's going to join us, Tim. I hope he is, but I'm not sure. I shouldn't even be talking because I'm not even positive, but I think that's what we're going to go with. I don't run this deal, just so you know. Anyway, thanks again to everybody for tuning in. Don't forget to check us out at wielandbuilders.com. Check us out on Facebook, social media, to see all the cool things we got going on in these houses that we're building. I'm grateful for you guys. We'll talk to you once again here at the end of May. I'm Jeff Whelan here on a WB Download.